Hi guys, here in the blogging plaza you might notice that I am not in my usual apartment like I do every single time. So you might be wondering, where am I? Well, I'm in another country. I'm actually in the city of San Borondon of the country of Ecuador. So you might be wondering also why I'm here. Well, I'm here to visit my parents. Despite the things that are going on right around the world, that doesn't mean that I give myself the time to visit my parents. Oh, and by the way, I came here as a surprise to especially my father. Sorpresa. Sorpresa pa. Ya te cuento.
¿Qué cosa?
Ya les cuento. Estoy filmando. ¿Qué te parece pa la sorpresa? ¿Qué te parece pa?
Pero claro que sí, pues, ¿cómo no me va a dar?
Ya les cuento, ya les cuento. ¿Comentarios pa? ¿O sabes qué? Va. Está filmando, por si acaso.
Ok, déjame no poner la mano, ¿ves? El abrazo. Ay, muchacho.
So I'm gonna stay here for a couple of days. So if I get to do some movie reviews, you have to deal a little bit in this environment because my parents' house doesn't have the correct amount of lighting in order to have some good brightness on the camera. So there's gonna be a little bit of restrictions here and there. Even some few restrictions on creating my thumbnails because, well, I don't have I didn't brought my Wacom tablet here. But anyway, hey, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, despite that, that doesn't mean that I'm out of watching movies here and there, either being on the movie theaters, even though they're restricted in one way or another, or on Netflix. In this case, I want to talk to you about a creature that lives on a pineapple under the sea, and that is none other than Spongebob. Because recently Netflix brought up the latest Spongebob movie that was supposed to be on summer, and it was supposed to be in movie theaters, but you know, things happen. And that is, of course, the movie SpongeBob Sponge on the Run. I think that was what it's called. Yeah, Sponge on the Run. Which basically it was gonna be the third SpongeBob movie, in which it's gonna be the first time that it's gonna be without the direction or the supervision of its original creator, Steven Hillenburg, because he passed away, and also it's gonna be kind of unique because it's gonna be completely in CGI instead of the traditional animation, which the first one and the last one had. So before I start out, I want to tell you a little bit of myself between me and SpongeBob. Right now, it's easy to make fun or to hate SpongeBob. Mostly because it's been now on Nickelodeon too long, or that the writing process wasn't as it used to be in the first few seasons. That's pretty much all the gist that there is. Personally, I still like SpongeBob. It's kind of a little bit of a guilty pleasure for me. But I cannot deny that the few seasons are good, and lately it's pretty much a hit or miss, at least for me. Some few episodes are good, sometimes are really bad. Lately I've been finding a little bit of how can I say, very decent episode, I would say. I'll probably say that the leg episode is probably one of the most recent yet better episodes that there is. So it's kind of like a hit or miss series, in which I get it. The series is supposed to be a comedy, so I don't take it too seriously but still I have kind of like a soft spot out of the series. I don't watch it regularly, but anyway, that's my gist out of it. When it's about the movies, the first one was okay. It's not kind of like a great movie, but it was okay. There were some parts that I did like. The second movie, I think it was a little bit better, but I have my complaints. The biggest complaint is that for a movie that it was called Sponge Out of the Water, that was only promoted for the climax. So in a way, you feel cheated out of because of the title. So it could have been better. But now we got this one, Sponge on the Run. Let me tell you what I think about this third movie of SpongeBob SquarePants. This movie, well, here's the thing. Comparing to the other movies that I just saw, like Scoob, I like it better than Scoob. I like a lot of the things that I have, mostly because of the soft spot that I do have with SpongeBob. But is it a good movie in general? Well, let's say that this movie needed a little bit more polish and a little bit more focus and a little bit more of an intention if you want to create how can I say, a movie that could be loved by everyone, even for people who are more observant. Because if you want to make a movie that wants to target to the younger demographic, you gotta treat them a little bit better compared to what you have. So, although I will say that in terms of storyline, it's a little bit better than the second movie, at least in my opinion. But it's not as good as the first movie, especially considering that there's few elements of this movie that it makes a little bit more harm to the movie's reputation and the franchise reputation more than it benefits. The movie has a simple premise. SpongeBob's pet snail, Gary, it goes missing because it was kidnapped by Poseidon, and of course it's basically a road trip between SpongeBob and Patrick to try to rescue this little pal. Yep, it is a simple premise, although there are some notable things that you can notice, but this is mostly kind of like the usual steps that you have to build up the movie. Just in case, ignore the birds. I know there's a lot of birds here. You catch my drift. When you're on the outside in a place with so many birds. I mean, you don't believe me? Look, I'm gonna put the camera over there. Let's see. There you go. See? Do you see? There's a lot of ducks here. So you gotta excuse on that one. Okay. I think the camera is well enough. So yeah. Okay. So what else I'm gonna say about this movie? Oh yeah, I was just getting started. In which when you notice, there are some elements that it feels a little bit too similar to not only a few SpongeBob episodes that you already feel familiar, like the one where Gary gets lost, but some of the elements are a little bit too familiar from the first movie. For one, this movie is also a little bit of a road trip movie, like the first movie. Of course, that instead of going with a hamburger vehicle, which it also appears in the movie, they go with a boatmobile with a robot that was constructed by Sandy, and I'll get to that robot later just in case. So you're gonna get a lot of these bullet points that it's gonna feel a little bit too familiar. So talking about a little bit of the characters, it's gonna feel a little bit pointless, or it's gonna take kind of like a little bit too long. I mean, if people watching this are feeling familiar with SpongeBob, they're gonna know this. But I think that it was fine. At least the characters stay like the usual character that they are. The voice acting, of course, is also top-notch, considering that these are seasoned actors, and I don't have to say much about it. But I think it's time for me to talk to you a little bit about the animation. The CGI animation, it's kind of like a little bit of a bummer that they decided to go traditionally animated. And they decided to go with the CGI one, in which, while I normally doesn't like to talk about it because it is always going to say that it's pretty good, at least let me give you some things. I like the texture that the animation has. It makes them look a little bit like claymation, which kind of makes me reminiscent of the Will Vinton commercials, like a little bit like you know, that the Domino's Pizza Noid commercials. That's what it reminded me. But of course, this time it's CGI. The charm is not exactly there, but they try to emulate that, which I can appreciate it. I am actually liking a little bit of the textures that this movie has. What are other things that I want to talk about this movie? I think I'm gonna talk about some of the plot points that this movie has. First of all, again, the story is really simplistic. Although the movie basically tries to deviate itself when it's not necessary, which I'll get to that. Because basically the plot has that, you know, Spongebob and the Krusty Krab's nemesis, Plankton. He realizes that that the heart of the Krusty Krab is not Eugene Krabs, it's actually Spongebob. So he decides to get rid of him. And by that is by capturing Gary, taking the opportunity that Poseidon is looking for a snail, in which he uses the snail's saliva in order to put it on his face so he can look younger. But of course, they ran out of snails, and now he's looking for one, and he put out wanted poster that he wants a snail. So Plankton decides to take the opportunity and kidnap Gary in order to give it to Poseidon. So that SpongeBob decides to rescue Gary, and of course, technically getting rid of him, because remember that robot that I talked to you about? Well, that robot was constructed by Sandy, in which she wanted to create kind of like a robot manager that could replace Mr. Krabs, and of course, he's not happy when, of course, it wanted to take over the Krusty Krab, so it ditches him, and Plankton and his robot wife, Karen, computer wife, I mean, they decided to adopt him. So Plankton uses this robot, which is a really cynical robot, that in order to become the chauffeur of SpongeBob and Patrick in order to rescue Gary. Of course, because they can't drive and they don't have a car. Let me tell you about this robot. This robot is usually kind of like, it's really cynical. He's like, you're fired, you're fired. I'm just rambling just in case. I want to mention also that if you watch the series for a long time, you're gonna notice that this is the third time they changed the character design of Poseidon. Because the first, of all the three designs of Poseidon, I think I like from the TV series better, with the orange beard and the orange hair, the crown. There's some kind of majestic feeling out of this one. The one from the first movie, he looks kind of nerdy, I'll say. Honestly, I'm not very fond of the Poseidon of the first movie. And now we got the third design of the Poseidon, almost like if the creator doesn't even bother to keep track of what character design they want to go with it. Although, who am I to blame when SpongeBob is usually, you know, all these gag comedies that you don't have to take seriously about continuities and everything, which I'll get to that also. But honestly, the Poseidon of this movie, he looks like the villain from the Dover Boys. With all green, with the mustache, that's what he reminded me of. Okay, now I gotta go also with some other element that this movie has, is that the pacing of the movie could have been a little bit better if it wasn't for some distractions. There is a sequence in which it's basically kind of like a dream sequence that doesn't feel like it isn't a dream sequence, that it feels like it totally derails from the movie. And in a way, it feels pointless. But ironically, it kind of becomes kind of like the best part of the movie, in my opinion, on how creative this movie could have been. Well, the thing is that while on the road trip, SpongeBob and Patrick, somehow they ended up in this Western, American Western world, in which they meet kind of like their sage, which is played by Keanu Reeves. It's a tumbleweed with Keanu Reeves wearing the most hippiest clothing you could ever imagine, in which he's kind of like the SpongeBob version of Jesus. Oh yeah, I said it. He looked like Jesus, this Keanu Reeves. But anyway, they're in this Western world in which somehow, in order to give inner courage to SpongeBob, he had to free from those cowboy zombies, in which they have also Snoop Dogg singing there. And I must admit that, well, this segment is pointless, feels pointless. I can't deny that it could have been a great music video because the production value is awesome. I love the costumes and I love the production that they went through with it. All this is all for a scene in which they have to free these zombies and give them eternal rest, mostly because they are being quote-unquote oppressed by none other than this cowboy zombie with superpowers, who is named El Diablo and is played by Danny Trejo. Honestly, again, all this looks so awesome. It's so awesome that it reminded me of the music video that, I don't remember what the name was of that music video it is. You know what? I'll put it here. It's an awesome music video that it feels like it, but unfortunately all these feels pointless and it kind of drags out the movie. And of course that after this, we of course get to see, you know, scenes of SpongeBob and Patrick, playing around Atlantic City, because it's not Atlantis, it's Atlantic City, and they go to, you know, they make it fun that Atlantic City is kind of like a casino place. We also see, what was it, that Mr. Krabs doesn't feel like running the Krusty Krab so much that he just gave up, and Plankton is kind of also having an epiphany. And of course it takes a while for the rest of SpongeBob friends in order to try to get into the movie. And that's pretty much a lot of the things that I have to say about this movie. While I don't want to spoil a lot about the movie, there is one moment in which it bears talking about it. And it was kind of heavily promoted in the trailers. And that is when we see the kids version of SpongeBob. We see, and in the trailer we see SpongeBob as a kid going to camp. And then meeting Gary and all these things. One thing I didn't even expect it from the movie is that another scene that kind of drags out is without spoiling it too much. There is kind of like a scene in which they're gonna give a trial to SpongeBob, and then all the characters, they begin to talk about how they met SpongeBob and how SpongeBob, because of his good heart and kindness, he changed their lives because they all went to the same camp. Even Sandy, in which the first time when she talked about it, my first instance is bullshit. Because that was basically the first episode. Well, third episode if you count it numerically, but it was one of the first episodes of how they met. They didn't met in camp. So basically, this series is retconning itself. Not even The Simpsons retcon something like that immediately. So in my mind, it was two things that came out into my mind. First of all, this was just an excuse to promote the spin-off series that is gonna come out, which is what was it? Camp Sponge, I think it was called. The CGI. Sorry, here comes the plane. Yeah, I forgot to mention that we live nearby the airport. So anyway, yeah, they're promoting this kind of like the Muppet Baby version of SpongeBob, which, okay, that's pushing it a little bit too much. Well, I'm not against it. What I am against, Nickelodeon, is that you guys are thinking about 3 spin-offs at once. The kid version, the Squidward series, and the Patrick series. Don't do that, Nickelodeon. Please don't do that. The Muppet Babies version is good enough. Because I don't think Patrick or Squidward are capable of handling their own series. That's my honest opinion out of it. So anyway, we get this, how can I say, this sneak peek of the Muppet Baby version of SpongeBob in order to prove that he is a nice guy. But again, ironically enough, just like the cowboy part of the movie, that was also kind of like the best part of the movie, because it's so heartwarming and so cute that you kind of buy it, even if it was kind of like a retcon. Honestly, I think that the one where SpongeBob and Sandy meet, that was actually honestly really, really well done. Well, me is a little bit of a bias because honestly, if I have to talk, probably Sandy is also one of my favorite characters in the series. But remember that I said that I got 2 things that I had to say? Yes. The second thing that I was thinking is that the way they talk and the way they express it, it almost feels like they're not only talking about SpongeBob, but they were also talking about Stephen Hillenburg, the original creator of SpongeBob. And when you think about all these things, it's really heartwarming. If only the movie could have done a lot more to that. Instead of just being just kind of like a snail and just being kind of like a couple of gags here and there, you could have made a more heartwarming SpongeBob movie. Here's a good experiment. Try making a movie about SpongeBob that doesn't rely too much on the gags. Although I understand, it's a comedy. It's a comedy, but if you wanted to make it a little bit more focused on the story and give it kind of like a more personal story to SpongeBob, then it will feel a lot more like a tribute to Stephen Hillenburg. But honestly, that scene, it really felt like kind of like a great tribute to it. And by the way, I do admit that yes, I was actually kind of sad when he passed away, especially the way he did. So much that I made a drawing and put it on Twitter. Not on my Twitter, of course, but you know what? I'll show you. This is a drawing that I did in order to honor Stephen Hillenburg. And honestly, while it's not one of my best works, I did my best to do it. So basically, those are some of the bullet points that I do have to talk about this movie. I wish I could talk to you a little bit more, but honestly, I will say that it's a mild recommendation for this movie. If you want to have a little bit of a, a fun time, not thinking it a little bit too seriously, it's a good attempt, I'll say. It's oh yeah, and one thing that I also want to tell you is that I feel that this movie is a little bit less cynical compared to the recent episodes of SpongeBob. Honestly, I think that a few of the things that ruined the new episode of SpongeBob is that Patrick became very cynical, and when you tone down his cynical nature, this is where he kind of works, at least for me. The jokes, of course, are hit or miss, and now that I talk about the gags here and there, well, there's a little bit of cynicism now that I think about it. But it's okay. It's kind of forgettable in a way. Again, mild recommendation, and that's all I have to say from the third movie of SpongeBob SquarePants. Hey guys, you might be wondering why during filming you're gonna hear a lot of bird chirps. Well, it's because of this. Near my parents' house, there's this pond where it is home for a lot of these native ducks, and they're here all day doing their usual stuff, resting, eating, and even fighting. So let me show you around these birds.